Picture this. You're standing outside and the temperature has dropped below 10 degrees Celsius, 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Nothing extreme, a mild autumn night, but you're wearing nothing. No shirt, no jacket, no blanket, just skin. Within 20 minutes, your body temperature starts falling. Within 2 hours, hypothermia becomes a real medical risk. Your body begins rerouting blood away from your hands and feet to protect your core. This isn't a hypothetical. It's what would happen to any of the 8 billion humans alive today, stripped of the one invention that separates us from every other primate on Earth. Here's the disruption. You are biologically a naked animal, not figuratively, literally. Humans have roughly the same density of hair follicles per square centimeter of skin as chimpanzees do, around 5 million total. The difference isn't quantity, it's function. Human body hair is mostly vellus hair, thin, short, nearly colorless, while a chimpanzee's is thick and insulating. We didn't lose our hair, we lost its purpose. And according to genetic research out of the University of Utah, that happened somewhere between 1 and 2 million years ago, long before anyone had invented a single stitch of clothing to replace it. That gap between becoming naked and covering ourselves spans hundreds of thousands of years. Figuring out what happened inside it has become one of the strangest detective stories in modern science. One involving lice DNA, polished rib bones, ivory beads buried with ice-age children, and a 5,000-year-old body pulled out of a melting glacier in the Alps. By the end of this, you'll understand that clothing wasn't just a fix for the cold. It was one of the first pieces of technology that let a hairless, tropical primate colonize the entire planet. And the proof of exactly when and how it happened is written into your own body right now, in places you'd never think to look. In 2004, geneticist Alan Rogers at the University of Utah tried to answer a strange question. If fur doesn't fossilize, how do you date the moment humans went bare? His team looked at MC1R, the gene that controls melanin production. Once our ancestors lost their fur, bare skin would have been exposed to direct sun for the first time in our evolutionary history, triggering fast selection for dark UV protective skin. By measuring how much variation had built up in that gene, Rogers calculated backward. His estimate, human hair loss occurred at least 1.2 million years ago, placing it in the era of Homo erectus, a species already walking as far as Dmanisi in the Republic of Georgia, a region with frost and snow. This is where anthropologist Nina Jablonski's research, done at Penn State University, becomes essential. Jablonski has spent decades studying how human skin evolved, and her work points to a specific driver behind our nakedness: heat management. Homo erectus was likely an endurance hunter, able to jog for hours across the African heat, chasing prey to the point of collapse, a strategy still used by the San people of the Kalahari today, known as persistence hunting. To run like that, you need a cooling system. Fur traps heat. Bare skin, covered in roughly 2 to 4 million sweat glands, does the opposite. It lets heat evaporate off the surface with remarkable efficiency. In exchange for that advantage, our ancestors gave up the built-in thermal layer every other primate still has. That's a good trade on the savanna. It's a fatal trade almost everywhere else on the planet. But Homo erectus didn't stay on the savanna. Fossil remains dated to around 1.8 million years ago have turned up as far away as Dmanisi, in the Republic of Georgia, a region with cold winters, frost, and snow. A hairless primate built for shedding heat was somehow surviving in a place that could kill an unprotected human in a single winter night. Something was covering their skin, and whatever it was has left no trace in the fossil record at all. Hide doesn't fossilize. Wrapped fur doesn't either. For roughly 1 million years, the answer to this contradiction stays completely invisible. Except it wasn't gone. Something else had been quietly recording the answer the entire time. Something still living on human bodies today. In 2003, biologist Mark Stoneking at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig, Germany, published a study on an unlikely witness: lice. Humans host 2 closely related subspecies. Head lice cling exclusively to scalp hair, with claws shaped for that hair's diameter. Body lice live only in the seams of clothing, venturing onto skin just to feed. They cannot survive without fabric to shelter in. Strip a population of body lice of clothing, and within days, it collapses entirely. That means the moment body lice genetically split from head lice, adapting to an entirely new microhabitat, is essentially the moment clothing itself first appeared. Stone King's team sequenced mitochondrial DNA from both populations and calculated a divergence date, roughly 170,000 years ago, with a range extending back as far as 190,000. That window lines up with marine isotope stage 6, a brutal glacial period running from about 190,000 to 130,000 years ago, when temperatures across Africa and Eurasia dropped sharply. It also means clothing predates the human migration out of Africa, generally dated to between 70,000 and 60,000 years ago. Humans weren't improvising cold weather gear on arrival in unfamiliar climates. They were already wearing it. But lice can only tell you clothing existed, not what it looked like. For that, you need stone and bone. In 2013, archaeologist Marie Soresi, then at Leiden University in the Netherlands, dated a set of polished rib bone tools called lissoirs, found at 2 sites in southwestern France to roughly 51,000 years ago. Ground smooth at one end, these tools were rubbed against animal hide in a repeated motion that compresses and aligns its fibers, making it more supple and more water resistant, a specialized technique, not something stumbled into by accident. At that date, the only hominins present in that region were Neanderthals, meaning a separate human lineage split from ours roughly 500,000 to 600,000 years earlier, had independently developed hide processing technology of its own, without ever borrowing it from us. Softening hide gets you a blanket. It doesn't get you a sleeve, a hood, or a boot sewn tight enough to keep out snow. That leap, from wrapping hide around a body to sewing it into a fitted shape, shows up in a bone needle from Denisova Cave in Siberia, dated to around 50,000 years old, and in roughly 3,000 mammoth ivory beads found at Sungir, Russia, arranged in dense bands along the bodies of 2 buried children about 34,000 years ago. Patterns that mark exactly where seams and hems of tailored clothing would have been stitched, long since rotted away. The final piece of proof arrived by accident. In September 1991, 2 hikers stumbled on a body melting out of a glacier in the Ötztal Alps on the border of Austria and Italy. Ötzi, as he came to be called, had died roughly 5,300 years ago wearing a woven grass cloak, a bearskin cap, a coat and leggings stitched from goat and sheep hide, and shoes insulated with hay for warmth. His outfit wasn't primitive improvisation. It was a fully realized system, layered, waterproofed, tailored to specific body parts. The product of over 160,000 years of accumulated trial, failure, and refinement passed down through people who never met each other. So the next time you put on a jacket without thinking about it, you're not performing a simple habit. You're the end point of the oldest surviving technology our species ever built. Older than agriculture, older than the wheel, quite possibly older than complex language. Every human who has ever crossed a mountain pass, outlasted an ice age, or walked into a colder world than the one their body was built for, did it wrapped in some version of the same idea you put on this morning. The naked animal never stopped being naked. It just stopped mattering. Because somewhere in the dark of 100,000-year-old winter, it learned to carry its own climate with it.